I've been asked by a couple people to kind of do a build video for my control archer. Um, and while it kind of fully forms into its final kind of like identity form at level 10 at the beginning of Act 3, I've decided to make this build video. It kind of morphs, the build kind of morphs from Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3, so I think a build video would be really helpful. I do actually think, I don't know, I think that this is the strongest build in the game. It's designed for solo play. You can play it with other characters, obviously. It just has a problem where it kind of can do everything, so it kind of trivializes. It makes the other characters in your party feel really redundant. But obviously, you can remove min-max options from this thing to kind of like keep it in check or make it a little bit more weak, right? That's totally up to you. But obviously, it's a charisma character, so it can do dialogue checks. It has dex, so it can do lockpicking. It can solo large groups of enemies and single enemies. It can spell cast. It can CC. It kind of makes it so like you really don't need other members of your party, and that's kind of one of the problems with it as well. I haven't gotten around to doing that much more fight videos on my other account because at that point there is nothing left to fight except the last boss, which I know that I can kind of like clear in one turn. So there's kind of nothing else to kind of showcase against. So, don't rush towards being too powerful, especially in Act 3. Things will be boring if you don't have anything to style on. But anyways, okay, let's start this build video. Well, first of all, it's your build choice, right? I know that a lot of content creators have, they're always being really positive, which I really love, and they're like, it doesn't really matter which class you build. You can pick anything that you want, and that is generally true for this game, and that is like a strong plus of the game. But for anyone to tell you that there isn't a best choice, I think that would be lying, right? Astarion is clearly by far the best character in the game because of his bite ability. Bite gives him a +1 to attack rolls, attack damage, saving throws, and like ability checks. It's like a +2 stat. Everyone chooses ability score improvement to get 2 in a point. Astarion gets that for everything, just for biting someone. You can just hide and bite someone and get that +1 to everything. For every build in the game, Astarion is the strongest character, the best race, quote unquote, to pick. But obviously, if you want to do things for it's by quite a lot, and then he gets another buff in Act 3 as well, which just makes him way better than everyone else in the game. I don't know why they haven't rebalanced it. But yeah, if you don't need that extra power necessarily. It's one good way of keeping the build in check. But basically, for every build, Astarion is always top pick, right? The second character that I'm really liking right now, because our build will be focusing a lot on concentration spells, especially coming to Act 2 and Act 3, is Gale. Because Gale gets a free advantage to Constitution checks, saving throws, which means that when someone tries to break his concentration, he has advantage. And I really rate that to the point where a lot of my previous builds, I took Warcaster. Now with this passive ability, I don't even have to take Warcaster, so that's 1 feat or 1 item completely saved. And I really rate that, and I think that potentially for a concentration type character, Gale is on par, is a potential other choice other than Astarion, right? So these two at the top. If you don't care about being fully optimized, I think every other character plus every other race is kind of on the same level. It's like kind of like Astarion and Gale top tier, and then everyone else is just kind of like normal, right? So yeah, but let's just assume that I'm picking Gale over here. Obviously, I would have to respec out a wizard, so maybe I'll just do Astarion. For Astarion, Minor Illusion is the best spell, not best cantrip in the game. It can completely win fights you can win fights just by setting up your enemies before combat, beforehand. I don't know why anyone else, even when the game first came out in early access, it was very obvious to people who hardcore this game that Minor Illusion was the best cantrip, and people like Firebolt. No, all of them are garbage. Minor Illusion is irreplaceable, but I try to not use it anymore because as a self-restriction. But yeah, Minor Illusion, amazing. Obviously can't choose another background because it's an origin character. Right. So for stats, I think this depends on whether you're taking the hack hair or not with this character. So I guess if you are playing truly solo, then you can go ahead and go dex 17. Intelligence is pointless. I don't understand why you would like intelligence and wisdom as saving throws are important, but there's almost nothing early game which check against your any of your saving throws essentially, except maybe dexterity and constitution. So it's not really that important. I would stat this way because I'll take +1 from the hacks here to get dex 18. And if I didn't, I would just drop this and put everything into strength for carrying capacity, right? This character is not in desperate need of stats, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. You can always respec later. But dexterity, at least 16. Constitution, 16, because we are going to be concentrating a lot, especially when we get to Act 2. Charisma, 14, because at this point in the game, we won't really be casting that much. It's not really that important, but you want it to make the shops cheaper and to pass dialogue checks. So I usually run it this way. It's a very martial focused thing. Last 2 stat points, I'll just put into strength for carrying capacity. Oh, I guess yeah, I'll just do it this way. And then I would take I think all of this is up to you. But I think the only one that I always take is persuasion and expertise because it makes the shop cheaper, and I'm a huge shop fiend. I use everything. I sell tons of stuff, trying to make tons of money. Try not to use any exploits, but yeah. So that's when you start the game. Let's assume that you've started your game. You've gone in, you played as a rogue for a little bit because Astarion or whoever you picked starts as another class, or you're about to start a new character, which is not Astarion or Gale, and you start as a bard, or after your respec. This is for after your respec, right? Bard level 1. If you already took Minor Illusion, then obviously you don't need it from Astarion, but if you didn't, then you would take it now and you would have Minor Illusion. Friends is a really, really powerful cantrip, which doesn't cost anything, and it would just automatically come up to your options, and I just remove it from my skill bar immediately so it doesn't take up any space. These are the only 2 that are really useful. Everything else is kind of meh. So, and eventually you're going to get all your cantrips, most of the cantrips anyway, I think. So, whatever. For your spells, like I think Long Strider is a must. So powerful. The extra movement speed, and without using a spell slot, it's like one of the best spells in the game. It's a must-have whenever you can take it. Sleep is really good from levels 1 to 6 for disabling someone. I like heroism thematically because it's a concentration spell. It's a very combat-focused concentration spell. It gives you back 5 temp HP points every turn. So if you are soloing, you're taking those hits. It can be really good for saving your potions and stuff like that. Really like that, like as your main concentration thing. And then take something like Dissonant Whispers to kind of like keep someone from moving around so that they so you can keep them in place as you like shoot them to death. But I don't really think it's that important. But yeah, it gives you something to do with your one action spell slot. Alternatively, take Speak with Animals. Just get all of those ritual spells like gone, right? Skills, again, I'm just going to do this, 14, and then I'm going to put everything else into strength. Wait, I'll just do this. Okay, cool. Boop, boop. Okay, and then we're going to level up to level 6 now. So level 2, again, like I said, everything here is not that useful. So I would take, I don't know, Thunder Wave. For get out of jail free card, but even if I was surrounded by a billion people, I probably still would be like not sure about using Thunderwave, so I'd probably Dissonant Whispers, right? I'm not going to swap out any spells because I don't think anything is really necessary. It's important here that we take College of Swords, and then now we start to get into some stuff which is somewhat useful. I really like Enhanceability, and I think Enhanceability, and then I'd probably replace Dissonant Whispers with Hold Person, maybe? I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of like just picking spells which are very utility-based. For the most part, the power of this build comes from just using the flourishes and attacking. So, like, anything you pick should be something that supports you in a very highly specific, useful kind of way, right? Fighting style doesn't really matter. Bow is going to be our main thing, but we will be wielding 2 weapons, so 2-weapon fighting kind of makes sense. Yeah, so Enhanceability, really good for passing certain checks, and then Invisibility, just so you can do some sneaky stuff like rob or like get out of combat if you're about to die, or like steal something if you need to without using an invisibility potion. that's always good. Also, nothing else here is worth it. Level 4, another cantrip. I just randomly pick one, like Vicious Mockery. I don't even look at the cantrips at this point. I really like Knock when you in late game, because you know, sometimes I can't even be bothered to like lockpick something, and something might be at like 20. So I think Knock is a really, really good thing to have for utility. At this point, if once you're at 6, maybe replace Sleep with nothing here seems very useful. Oh, I didn't take Invis yet. Okay, grab Invis. Feet, you will be taking Sharpshooter. It's such a huge amount of damage to pass up, and but you will struggle with getting enough stats for your attack roll, right? So itemization can help with that, and if you are struggling to do enough damage, I would say just turn off Sharpshooter, but eventually you will build towards it by using things like Bless, or like items and things like that to kind of make sure you do land your hit or high ground, right? But if you can't cope with it yet, it'll be easier and easier as you level up. You can always toggle it off. At level 5, we finally start getting some useful stuff. I think Plant Growth is a must-take. I think at this point in the game, the amount of CC that it can offer is absurd, and it doesn't need concentration. Another spell, any other spells that would be useful... Heroism kind of like isn't very strong anymore at this point. I think I wouldn't mind removing it, placing it with something like Fear to grab extra, like disabling characters, immediately making them drop their weapons is quite good in the gift camp, and sometimes you can loot their items and sell it, but you only really need one disabling spell, so it's either Hypnotic Pattern or Fear, and I didn't really end up using these that much, but they were situationally quite strong. Right, so 6 is where you hit your huge power spike, because you have your flourishes, and you have your reset. You have 3 short rests, and you reset your bardic inspirations per short rest, which is insane. At level 5, Gloomstalker is the most powerful martial class, or class, I think, at that point in combat in the game. Once you hit level 6, it becomes Bard, I think. You also get Counter Charm, which has like a lot of uses, especially in a party scenario, but you're kind of solo, so it doesn't really matter. It can also kind of be used as like a minor illusion. Enemies will just, for some reason, focus down the Counter Charm, and you won't even get hit. But you don't need any exploits. This build is strong enough. So don't even do that. So you get your extra attack as well. So powerful. Is there anything useful here? I don't really know. You could take Feign Death if you want to exploit like and rob people blind. I didn't end up using any of these spells, realistically, so I would just take ritual spells like Silence or Disguise Self. So it situationally becomes helpful, right? At this point in the game, so 1 to 6, right? We're talking about like this kind of early game, ish. I think that the only items that are noteworthy in Act 1, not including the GIF area, is I think clicky heals are really, really strong. Gives you something to do with your bonus action, helps you kite characters. And the Titan String Bow is the most, in my opinion, the most powerful weapon in the game. I've gone through the whole game. I tried all the strong bows out. I was praying for something to be better than the Titan String Bow, but it's just too powerful. Like, it's really, really, really good, right? So I think before you get to the GIF area, these are the only 2 items that... Oh, yes, there is one more item. The Whispering Promise is quite strong as well, because when you're soloing, you end up chugging a lot of potions, and it gives you auto bless, right? Oh, sorry. Sorry. It gives you bless, and that's going to help mitigate your Sharpshooter, right? So other than that, I think fill in the blanks with whatever you find. They're not that important, right? Once you get to the Underdark, I wouldn't even just strongly suggest you are min-maxing. People who don't use elixirs and say that they're not like core part of the game, I don't really understand. You can only have 1 elixir up at any time, so effectively it is part of your build to choose which elixir you're going to use, right? Elixirs of Giant Strength, you can get them right at the beginning of the game. That's why I dump the heck out of Strength in basically all my builds. And I use Elixir of Giant Strength, which combos with the Tightening String Bow to give you like +4 or +5 to like all damage. And when you get, as soon as you get that Tightening String Bow, it's just so powerful. Nothing can match it, right? Once you get to the Underdark, you can grab the Club of Giant Hill Strength, which can actually be offhanded, if you can see over here, which will put your strength at 19 automatically, right? Which means that you don't need the elixir of Hill Giant Strength anymore, which is amazing, because then you can use your elixir, you can use the Bloodlust elixir instead, which is the strongest elixir in the game, right? So this allows you to use this elixir instead of the... But before you get this, I think just using Giant Strength is better. They're easier to get, and these are quite rare at that point in the game. But once you get to, like, you know, Underdarky section, you can start getting a few more Bloodlust elixirs and crafting a couple more, and that's when this combo becomes worth using, right? The diadem, also early game, I love using the Warped Headband of Intellect. It's just flat out stats for a dump stat, and that can help sometimes with, you know, checks, help with checks, essentially. When you get to the GIF area, Graceful Cloth is pretty good. I think the plus two dex is great. Again, helping to mitigate your hit chance from the sharpshooter. Yeah, and then other than this, I did experiment with the Bow of the Banshee from the Underdark. It is pretty good, but the problem is that it doesn't work as I thought that it would work. It doesn't... The chance of frightening an enemy doesn't get affected by things like the Helmet of by Arcane Acuity or your stats. So it kind of is like, it's cool, but you could just kill things faster with the Tightening String Bow, right? I mean, I went through this quite a bit. I was like, it'd be cooler to CC them down. I think if you're playing with a party and you wanted to tone the strength down of this build a little bit, I think go for the Bow of the Banshee. But realistically, if things are dead, then they're not moving. So yeah. So we're back. Next, I'm going to deal with the next section of levels, which is 7, 8, and 9. And I think this is kind of where Act 2 is. I think some people might actually reach level 10, but since my level 10 choice is more dependent on Act 3, I'm not going to go over it yet. So for 7, then we're going to start multi-classing. And I think from here, you have two options. It's going to be some combination of 1 wizard and 2 fighter. The thing that you're really waiting for to go wizard is whether or not you can get a haste scroll in the shop, right? Once you can, almost my entire reason for going wizard is to get the haste scroll, to be able to cast haste and a couple of other really powerful support abilities. So for abilities, I don't really think it matters. Maybe like Mage Hand to solve quests, Blade Ward are not really friends. We already had that. I don't even know. Does it matter? Doesn't really, not really sure. For abilities, I would pick Shield. Shield is a really, really important like soloing ability. Long Strider we already have. Mage Armor can be useful, especially if we're wearing this Cat's Grace. And then Disguise Self maybe to act, you know, for certain quests or utility. And then other than that, everything's kind of like pointless. Enhanced Leap can be good for solving some quests, but you don't even have enough intelligence to keep all of these on anyway. So does it really matter? I don't really think so. For the prepared spell, so once you let's assume you hit level 6 and you manage to have a haste scroll, I would go wizard as soon as possible so that you can self-haste yourself, and you should be able to right click and learn haste basically once you have access to level 3 spell slots, right? So that's our next one, wizard. Let's go. After that, that's all we needed wizard for. So after that, it's just fighter. And for fighter, I would pick archery to mitigate the attack roll decrease from sharpshooter. And then finally, we want, you know, the king of things like action surge, so we can finish the fights in like a single turn, right? And action surge combos really, really well with the bard because we get it per short rest, and bard has Song of Rest. So the way I've designed this character is to do big fights per short rest, right? And that's kind of like the resource that we are spending is short rest. So we get 3 of these max strength blowout power thingies like per long rest. Yeah, and I think it's quite a bit more efficient than what other casters are able to achieve, right? So, yep. Do this. Right. Okay, no, Gale, we don't care about you. Right, so essentially my skill bar and abilities that I would probably use actually use at this point in the game is literally just brace, slashing flourish, ranged, and then kind of like nothing else is that useful. And you can just see my bar over here. It's very minimalistic. I don't even think I would really use fear at this point. This is kind of for like later down the line when you start to combo like a little bit more. That's basically it. Like, these are all the skills that you basically need, and it's a very, very strong build already as is, right? As you hit Act 2, you start to get some really, really important key items, right? Oh, sorry, I didn't mention. I'm not sure if I mentioned using the Diadem of Arcane Synergy potentially at the end of Act 1, but at this point we get some really key items, and I've like two ways of playing this build. One is like a Frost build, and one is like a Fire build, right? Frost is more for more CC, and Fire is more for damage, especially AoE damage. So first of all, the Fire build, it's quite easy to play, I would say. You get the Helldusk gloves, or you can equip the thermodynamic gloves for heat. I think both are valid options. You are playing around Oil of Combustion, which makes it so that when you shoot a target once with oil, and then when you shoot again with fire damage, it will explode. And the way that we are getting elements on our weapons, which I've already done over here, is by use of the Drake Throat glaive that you get at Moonrise Towers, right? Look it up online if you don't know how to use that. The other really important item for all of the builds that I'm using is the Risky Ring. There are not a lot of strong rings in the game, and therefore it's very, like, the Risky Ring is the most powerful in-slot thing that you can have, and I think that's, and the disadvantage saving throw on Constitution is the main risky thing about it, and that's why I said before I really value Gale's ability to have advantage on Constitution saving throws so we don't drop Haste. Without that, it's going to be really tough to kind of like not drop Haste, right? For gear in Act 2, I don't have it here up. There's just this year's half plate, which gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws, really strong, to counteract that the Risky Ring, right? And for the Fire build, I think let's go Flawed Helldusk over here. This is more of a damage build, so Diadem of Arcane Synergy would be the best item for you over there, and this would be incredibly strong at taking out large groups of enemies, right? The more CC version of this is to go Winter's Clutches, Snowburst Ring, using the Drake Fire to do ice on your weapon instead, and then potentially Helmet of Arcane Acuity. So Arcane Acuity will affect the frost on the ground, and it makes it a very, very high percentage chance for enemies to slip over. So basically anything you shoot which isn't dead might fall over and lose its turn immediately. Or if it didn't fall over immediately, then when it takes its turn, it's going to fall over in its first step, right? It's very, very strong for this point in the game. And it's a really cool thematic build that I haven't really seen anyone talk about. And obviously, Disintegrating Nightwalkers, you don't want to trip on your own ice, right? And then I think that brings us up to level 9. So yeah, 7 to 9, pick some combination of Wizard 1, Fighter 2. And if you want to, respecking at this point would be quite powerful. Because what you do need to do is you need to make sure that you start with Fighter to get this Constitution saving throw proficiency. So I would do Fighter 2, then I would pick Wizard 1, and then finish with Bard 6 in order to get your casting modifier changed back to Charisma. Right, now we're hitting level 10. I think it's very, very important at this point that you go Warlock, because it's a charisma-based caster. You go Fiend, and then you have to take, the important skill to take here is Command, right? The reason for that is that you know how like in the mid-game of this build, where you're playing with Frost and like that kind of CC thing, a lot of the enemies at this point are resistant to things like Prone, especially, you know, the Steel Watchers. However, Command is a really strong way of like dealing with them. You can make them drop their weapons, you can make them skip their turns with Halt. It's incredibly powerful, and I can't think of any other way to get Command for cheap. With only 1 point in Warlock, we get it, right? So I think this is the most valid, like a great dip moment. And getting at this point where you start fighting Watchers and things that are immune to Prone, I think it's really, really strong, and I've really benefited from going Warlock at this point. For the last 2 levels, you are going back to Bard, and it is basically ability cleanup. What we're getting by moving to Bard 8 is we get an extra charge per short rest of Bardic Inspiration, and I forget if we get anything else, but I'm just going to pick some skills over here. Freedom of Movement, blah. don't really use it. And then greater invisibility, I guess. And for the last feat, we are going to take alert so that we always move first during combat. I'm not sure if I said it before. I don't rate ability improvement. I don't think this is a build that really needs ability improvement. Hit chance has been completely solved by Risky Ring, and +1, and like why do we need +1 casting modifier is just nothing compared to what an Arcane Acuity +7 can give you, right? That's plus worth like 7 times what ability improvement is worth, and we're going to have it maxed, like fully up all the time. So for sort of end game, I'm not going to do like end game, which I consider like after I've beaten Raphael already, because really, realistically at that point, like after you've, sure he has some items that are really core for this build, but like after that, who's there left to kill? Answer is basically nobody, because if you can beat Raphael, the rest of the enemies will just roll over to whatever you have. So like the build at that point isn't really important. I might go over like what the final build is, but it's really not that important, I think, at this point. Okay, cool. Final items. Helmet of Arcane Acuity. This is the bread and butter of our build. We are a build that both has the ability to stack the Arcane Acuity faster than anybody else and to utilize it in between turns because of our Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. Cloak of Displacement. This is an Act 3 item. I think it's either this or the Cloak of Protection. The half this year's half plate. I use this for the advantage in Constitution saving throws, and this is important to offset the negatives from the Risky Ring. The Wanderer's Gloves are a decent glove at this point. You can also use the Helldusk gloves if you need more damage, or if you want to play with the with the oil of combustion coating. I think that's valid. I just it seems pretty. I just didn't want to use my coatings all the time, so Wanderer's Glove is a really good way of just getting an extra double shot in there. Helldusk Gloves are early Act 3 item, I believe. Again, it's just an alternative to. The boots don't really matter that much. I just don't want to fall over and slip when there's ice on the floor, right? Amulet of the Devout, primarily because there aren't that many key amulets for this build as far as I know, and +2 to spell save DC helps even more, getting 100% on our when we are casting crowd control spells on other people. Mystic Scoundrel Band is what makes our build unique compared to the heaps of other builds in the game. You know, we get like a ton of attacks, and then we're able to use illusion spells with a really strong casting modifier with our bonus actions to CC whatever enemies are remaining, right? Risky Ring covers a bunch of our weaknesses and gives us a lot of our boosts, and we're also playing around the Risky Ring as well. Rhapsody, you get from Cazador's area. One of the best is the best in slot, I think. +3 to attack rolls, because we hit so many times, it's amazing. +3 to spell save DC. Again, like, it's basically just really hammering home, like, how much plus DC do we need? That's +7, +3, and then +2. That's a +12 to anything we roll. Anything is going to get CC'd at that point, right? And then we've got the Club of Hill Giant Strength over here to kind of give us enough strength to use the Titan String Bow. Now, if you have... if you're willing to use the elixirs of Cloud Giant Strength and to kind of forego the Bloodlust elixir, which is, I mean, it's stronger, but maybe you've run out or you want to try something different, then I think another really cool option is to either swap the Club of Giant Strength with Ambusher, or to swap Rhapsody. Wait, why would I ever swap Rhapsody? That's silly. I think it's either Rhapsody and Club Giant Strength, or it is Rhapsody and Ambusher. And Ambusher is really cool because with Alert, you're always going first, and this actually applies to your ranged attacks as well. And in that first turn, you kind of unload your full onslaught of damage at your enemies. It's really, really powerful. I think it's worth, trying out, right? That's the item. Yeah, in terms of skills, I'm just going to rearrange this a little bit to kind of show what skills I actually use, and I think that I think having a really clean hotbar is a pretty important part of the game, so you can really concentrate on what you're actually using for this build. Don't get you confused with all of the options of what we have, just keep what we're actually using for the most part. Love Knock. Fear, I don't like it because it's concentration. Halt is just better than Fear now. That's kind of why we took 1 point. Command is kind of like a bread and butter CC spell. Um, yeah, and then I think Minor Illusion. I don't really use Minor Illusion at this point. I will equip Hold Monster on occasion, depending on whether the fight requires Hold Monster. For example, Raphael. In Bard, what do we use? This Long Strider, like the stuff over here on the right are things that I kind of cast, like outside of combat or like at the start of each day. Vicious Mockery is really nice now because it's an enchantment cantrip, and if we don't have anything to use, we don't want to use a spell slot in between our attacks. Vicious Mockery is great. Dissonant Whispers doesn't use concentration, stops somebody from moving. Halt doesn't use concentration, potentially, halt up to like 5 enemies and then just make them skip their turns. So this is kind of my category of things that I use for my bonus actions, and then everything I use for my main actions is kind of just over here. So just wanted to jump in and do a level 10 kind of like combat showcase. I've already kind of put an elemental weapon fire. I think I just felt like doing more of a fire vibe this time. I'm going to do a giant strength, cloud giant strength, because I just got to Act 3 with this build. And then because I'm using that to pump my strength, I no longer need the club, right? So this is, I think this is the base setup. Going to be a little bit like meaner here to kind of show off this more fire build. I don't really have to pull these guys all together, but it will let you see some big numbers. Okay, so we're going to self-haste ourselves. We are going to Oil of Combustion our weapon. I'm going to do this thing over here. I usually don't like splurging these two before the start of the round, but I do want to apply the Oil of Combustion early. I'm moving first. That's amazing. I'm going to apply Brace. Where is my little Brace skill? Where is he? Yeah, Brace. Really good when you are very first turn focused, right? We're going to use Arrow of Many to kind of tap these guys. Boom, boom. And obviously I'm not using my whatchamacallit. I'm not using Bloodlust either, which would obviously make this build a much stronger. Just gonna pump down this guy. Action Surge. He's almost dead already. Should be in explosion range. And then here's where the command comes in. I'm gonna halt these three. 1, 2. Actually, I only need to use 2 levels because one of them is exploding already. I'm gonna halt them so they miss their turns. Oh, forgot about him. Can shield blow this. Waste. I don't really mind about getting hit over here. Doesn't really matter to me. Let's Arrow of Many, just for kicks, shits and giggles. So this will apply the Oil of Combustion onto all of these targets, which is a really cool application. Great for dealing with AoE. He's in explosion range again. And I'm just going to halt them again. I'll just use 1, and I can even use my Warlock spell slot for that, so I get it back every short rest. So why don't you just stay in there and then blow up. Last guy. And clear. In a slightly different way. No Minor Illusion this time. No oils this time as well, so not using the Foster the Fire. I've decided to enchant my bow with lightning instead because I'm fighting a bunch of Steel Watchers, even though it doesn't really matter too much. I'm trying to play around with the Ambusher instead as well, and I'm using Wondrous Gloves. I've taken off everything I don't feel contributes to this fight. And yeah, what I'm doing is I'm going to try to maximize Brace, essentially. And anyways, let's see what happens. Oh, I don't need this over here. This should be my arrow button. Okay, so I'm just going to start us off by tapping this character. Nothing fancy, not even like a big starting move. I'm going to start with Brace, and what I'm trying to do here is to get as much value out of my Brace as possible. So I'm gonna tap, 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 which taps all of them, applies my ambusher once to each of these targets. Really, really, really cool. Gonna do it again. Second character is down. Gonna go for this, and I think we're gonna take this Steel Watcher out first over here. So the 6 extra damage is actually coming from the Ambusher, and the Ambusher damage is also getting re-rolled because of Brace, which I really like that kind of interaction. So he's already in exploding mode. And then here, I'm just going to do a 2 halt on these guys so they don't get to take their turn at all. I used to try making them drop their weapons because it was cool that they never were able to pick up their weapons, but why even give them the chance? Do you know what I mean? Like, why even bother giving these guys the chance to move, realistically? I think he's going to be in explode range as well. No, he's not. No. Oh, okay. Another attack. Wonderful. Okay, he's in explode range. Now I can just halt using my Warlock slot, which will come back once per long rest. My build, like I said, functions off long rests anyways. And then now there's just one enemy left, and I just poke him down. And I can either just halt him again, or I can force him to drop his weapon. I don't think I'm just going to give him a chance. Maybe I should have made him drop his weapon for some variety. I think he's kind of screwed anyway. And obviously this fight could go a lot faster, assuming I got the gloves that ignore resistances against piercing damage. I think that's one of the reasons, you know, it's got a lot of piercing resistance. That's the only thing keeping these guys alive, and meaning that I can't one-turn them. But it's still like a very, very easy fight, and you can imagine that anything which doesn't have those resistances is going to basically get screwed over. And yeah, that's the build. Leave me any comments below.